Okay, Small Axe Talks. This is season 2. I'm here with Dustin. Thank you, man, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Dude, no problem.
Dang. So the first thing I want to just to get it started off roll into it is I know you were doing your own podcast and it was more I think like political, right?
Yeah.
So what was the idea behind that and kind of how'd you get started with that?
So the idea behind it was is me and a good buddy of mine that I worked together in a restaurant with. We were kind of talking and we were like, dude, there's really no voice for people our age in the political sphere that doesn't give in to the general, I guess, influence of the left media. You have all these people out there that are close to our age, but they're always just feeding into the left side of it. There's really no one who objectively sits back and looks at both sides and says, all right, what the fuck's going on? How do we interpret this? And especially with a lot of people our age in the universities, I don't know if you're going to college right now or
No, I'm not.
I didn't either. Well, I did for a semester, but so much shit got crammed down your throat, and it's like, believe what I say and write papers towards what I say, and if you don't, you're fucked.
Really? Okay, so I just went to community college when I didn't go to college, so
Yeah.
I didn't have that experience. But how was that? How did that happen?
So I had it happen. I went to GCU. I went to a 4-year college for one semester. Did not work out. But before that, I did 2 years at community college back in my hometown in California. So I'm from Fresno, California.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, shit, nice. Shout out to California.
Yeah, California, baby. So I took a political science class, and our teacher was just adamant that everything he said was right. I mean, this guy, anything he wrote down was practically the equivalency of the Bible to Christians. Like, this guy just, like, he worshipped the ground that he walked on, and just thought he was hot shit. And I remember we walked into class one day, and he drew a big old black box on the whiteboard, and he put a dot on the inside of it, and he goes, how many of you are Christian in this room? So a couple of us raised our hands, and he started putting more dots inside the square. And he goes, you know what this square represents? He was like, this square represents you limiting yourself to ideas. He goes, anyone inside this square is an idiot. He goes, you need to expand this square, and he erased the square and allow yourself to broaden your imagination and open your mind. And I just was so blown away that someone like this would say something to Christians like that. Because if anyone ever did that to Muslims, it would be game over, man. They would get crucified. Like, they would just get wrecked in the media. Like, it would be all over the news that this person was xenophobic and that they hate Muslims and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, what? Like,
that's interesting. You saying that, it just reminded me. I took a philosophy class at Scottsdale Community College, and I forgot about that. But the guy who was teaching it, he said something similar when I think one of the first classes, he we were talking about religion, and he said he got into like a confrontation with one of the people that was in the class, and he said anybody who I'm not religious and I didn't grow up religious, but I respect people's beliefs and opinions, and I don't give a shit what anybody believes as long as they're good people and they don't fuck with other people. But with this kid, he's like he straight up told this kid, he's like, if you believe in God or that means you're weak.
Yeah.
And that means that you can't stand that this may be it, and blah blah blah. I don't know, it was really fucking off-putting though. And
yeah,
that's interesting.
It's and it just between that, and then we would get in these political discussions, and like, my thing is I don't ever like just throwing facts in people's faces. I like to ask questions, because if you start being the one to ask questions and someone else is just throwing shit in your face, you can lead. They're so focused on just trying to outdo you, and if you're not focused on that, you can get them to shoot themselves in the foot in the process of asking questions.
So them just trying to defend their ideas and not.
Yeah. And so these liberal teachers just hated me, because
Really?
I would just ask questions and I would walk them in circles and then get them to shoot themselves in their own foot, because I'd get them frustrated. And for me, I don't give a shit. Like, I honestly don't. I hated college. I thought it was pointless. I thought I was going there for a job that didn't exist. The statistics don't line up on why you should go to school, but
It's true.
Everyone in our generation was told in high school that if you don't go to college, you're not going to be successful.
Well, that's the amazing. It's a fear tactic, because parents. That's the interesting thing about being alive today, is it's not like any other time in human history. Your family and people around you taught you how to hunt, how to maybe build a home, how to farm. But today it's weird, because industries and the job market are changing so quickly, you don't necessarily know, people aren't self-reliant. So it's like you have to find value in how you can, add something or contribute to society. So it's like parents don't know, all they know, they just know you need to go to college. So it's like you're 18 and coming out of high school, and it's like you don't know who you are. You have no self-awareness. So you're going to do what you think is the right thing. But it's so fucked up because it's like they're loading these kids down with debt. And they get out of college and they're working retail, they're working at a restaurant, they're doing all these jobs that are fine. There's nothing wrong with doing those things, but it's not going to necessarily lead anywhere.
And the crazy thing about student loan debt, and I don't know if you know this, but it does not, even if you file for bankruptcy, that student loan debt will not go away. It's there. It's practically indentured servitude is what it is. And we are, and it's trapping people our age in a horrible financial situation where they're going to take some huge financial risks to get ahead in life, but they can't. So we're holding all these people back and working in, I just got out of the restaurant industry, just got out, but I was in it since the time I was 13 years old, and I would meet people all the time. Yeah, I got a degree in this, but they're behind a bar making drinks for people. And I'm like, well, you're like, what, $50,000, $60,000 in debt just to make drinks for people? And you've been making drinks for the last 4 years out of college? Like, what the fuck are you doing with your degree? You invested $60,000 into something you're not using? Maybe you should have thought about that before you went, And I honestly think, for me, I didn't want to go to college. I really didn't want to go, but my parents were like, oh, you're going to go. Either you're going to go or you're going to get the fuck out of our house, And so I went begrudgingly, and just kind of drug ass the whole way through, didn't want to be there, didn't want to do it. I didn't see the point in doing it. I was like, this is stupid, but I didn't know what I wanted to do,
Same here.
And I just think a lot of people, but I think that just goes because they're shoving the idea of college down so many kids' throats in high school. And the simple fact of it is that not everyone needs to go to college. But we're sending all these kids to college, and the problem is that the universities are ran by the left-leaning people, and you look at what's going on. I mean, what happened out in Oregon, those people, they wanted all the white people to leave campus.
What university was that?
I'm trying to remember the name.
Oh, that's what happened with, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Because one of the guys, he was on, I think, Rogan's podcast maybe a couple times.
And
that's one of the Weinstein
it was Eric
brothers,
Weinstein,
right?
Yeah. They wanted him to leave, and he put his foot down and said no.
That's racist.
That's racist. And the problem is that the way they want to solve these problems is the way they want to make it right is being racist to the other group of people that they feel is oppressing them.
Well, that's what I think. Maybe, like I said, I know we both are huge Rogan fans, but I don't think there's a voice out there for younger people right now, or millennials, because I don't think the older generations quite understand how tightly people are being squeezed right now, young people. And I think they look at it like, you just gotta work through it. That's what I did when I was young. But what they're not taking into account is wages have been so stagnant, and the cost of living and housing and schooling is so out of control that young people can't even fucking tread water. It's it's very, very difficult for
unless you come from a family that's upper middle class to upper class, there's no way
to fall back.
I mean, you literally have to bust your ass so hard. It's close to impossible.
Just to maintain.
Just to maintain. And it's by pure luck if you make it. By pure luck. I know my parents have had to help me out because it's impossible.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay, 22. Wow.
I'm 22. Yeah.
I'm 27.
Dude.
So I got some fucking knowledge, buddy.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
It's
I'm an elder millennial. So you're technically, are you millennial or Generation Z? Do you know?
I think I'm a millennial. I'm 96. I think I'm on the tail end of the millennial spectrum. But I hate my generation.
Why?
Bunch of entitled little fucks, man.
You think?
Everyone here just wants it handed to them. They think they can have what their parents have without putting in half the hard work.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest issue with our generation is that no one wants to work. There's plenty of jobs out there. It's just people say those jobs are beneath them. You know, it's like people our age, whenever people our age complain about jobs or in their 20s complain about jobs and working, I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, if you really need money and you really need to make it work, you'll bag groceries at Fry's for, you know, $12 an hour. You do what you got to do to get to the top. But if you're just going to sit back and throw your hands up and say, oh, woe is me, someone needs to do something about this. It's not how it works.
Well, I definitely, I understand that point of view. And having worked in restaurants and retail and, you know, fucking, you know, I've hotels, all the like normal jobs, you know, I have no problem with working at all. You know, I want to be working. I want to do something. The problem I have is when people are being taken advantage of, and when there's clearly no path out of these low paying jobs. Because when people are basically, when it becomes they're just, you know, wage slaves, that's what I have a problem with. And when they're being squeezed so tightly by the housing, you know, when do you get to the point where you need to, you know, say something or do something? Like, what's going to be the breaking point? How tightly can people be squeezed? I mean, what is going to be the point that this is too much? Because it's like you have these corporations now where, I mean, they're squeezing these people so tightly, and you have these people at the top that are, I have no issue with if you want to be rich and you want to have a Ferrari and you want to have mansions, and I don't give a fuck about that at all. But it's to me, as a country and a society, we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not even allowing people to live with dignity. I mean, to at least have a clean, safe home to live in. And I would love to be a barista and work in a cool coffee shop. I could do that for the rest of my life. I can seriously do that and be happy. But it's like they're squeezing these people so tightly that they can't even maintain. That's what I have a problem with it. I want to work. I want to work hard. I want to contribute and be a part of society, but I don't like being fucking taken advantage of.
Oh, big time.
You know?
Big time. And I think that's where you just have to realize, because I got to a point where I realized, like, I know I'm a hard worker. I know that, like, my parents taught me at a young age, if you're doing a job, whether it has your name on it or not, because you did it, it has your name on it, and you're going to do the best fucking job you could do because it has your name on it. And you're saying, I did this, you know? And I think that if you always carry that mentality, no matter where you go, you will be successful, you know? And so I think it's realizing that. Also, I think that there's this idea of, like you said, of some people, I've kind of thought this recently, that some people need to have some sort of fulfillment from their work. There's nothing wrong with that, you know? It's not like you said, you could work at a coffee shop, be happy your whole life. Some people need that fulfillment. They need a reason to go to work every day. You know, they want to feel good at the end of the day. And some people just need to work, you know? Like,
what do you mean by that?
Like, for me, like, whether I'm serving tables or I'm, you know, wrapping fire installation around a duct above a kitchen in a cramped ass space, it's like 110 degrees in the middle of summertime, like, work is work for me, you know? And, like, yes, I love feeling good. I'm not saying that that's bad to go to work and want to be happy about it, but I think you have to ask yourself eventually, you know, like, all right, like, yes, this makes me really happy, but I'm sacrificing something for that, you know? And I think that part of the thing is that there's job markets that are extremely saturated right now, and things like office jobs, coffee shops, grocery stores, things like that are saturated. Retail stuff like that's oversaturated.
Service
because
industry.
Yeah, it's like when my parents and our parents were growing up. Like, I don't know how it was here. My dad grew up in Santa Maria in California.
Okay.
They had the highest level math class my dad took was geometry, and that was a meat cutting class.
Really?
Yeah. So, like, that was the high in that like, all the kids who took that class now own, you know, butcher shops in Santa Maria, and they own like the 4 or 5 major butcher shop, you know, the meat whatever, I can't remember what they call it, but you know, they go down to the local butcher on the corner, and that's these guys that started these companies at high school. You know, jobs like that are gone. Jobs like steel workers, millwrights, carpenters, plumbers. I mean, all these jobs are there, but I think a lot of it is shifted, and now we have this oversaturated market where they're looking at it, and this market has made so many rooms for people to work and pay for but now they're looking at it and they're like, whoa, like this is a huge, like we have a lot of people, and these other industries are suffering. The average age of a welder is 55 years old. They're telling us we're going to run out of plumbers in the next 20 years. Electricians a dying breed. We're going to run out of electricians within the next 40 years. All these other jobs aren't being filled. So all these people are flooding to this other industry, whereas it used to be balanced,
Well, it's because they had more, trade schools. Stuff
yeah.
like that back then, right?
And a lot of this stuff was taught in high schools, or it got the ball rolling, I mean, and luckily now, Trump's dumped a lot of money towards this in high schools,
Really?
But I think that what it's going to take overall in general is a healthy economy. I think that once the economy gets back to where it needs to be, and I think we're definitely on the way there.
Really?
I mean, our economy is doing great right now.
Supposedly.
I mean, we're the number one producer of oil. Our interest rates, well, I mean, they're about to go up. I mean, the Federal Reserve is kind of sketchy, but
kind of
is sketchy.
Yeah,
it's terrifying. The Federal Reserve.
So that's the thing I don't understand is the debt just keeps going up.
Yep.
Every administration, no matter whether you're Republican or Democrat or whatever the fuck you are, Donald Trump, the debt is increased by I don't know how many trillion it is. So the debt keeps going up, okay? And we bail out, these banks or, the auto industry, too big to fail. So these people get socialism and they get to be bailed out whenever they fuck up. But the American people do not.
Yeah.
And when's the day gonna come? Are we gonna be 50 trillion in debt? And then the government says, "Hey, we need to pay this back." American people, that's on you. Your taxes are now gonna be 90%.
Yeah.
Like what do you think is gonna happen with that?
I think well, with Trump, the bailouts are definitely becoming less and less, and the problem is that we're allowing these banks to take risks.
Yeah.
The banks pretty much...
he deregulated. That was one of the first things he did when he got into the office is he deregulated the banks.
Yeah.
How was that a good idea?
Because the banks need to move freely, and the problem is the left and Obama put all these restrictions on a lot of the bankings.
After the housing crisis and all the shit that went down in 2008.
But the problem is that we federally insure these banks. I mean, we started it with back in the AIG bailout, AIG made a shit ton of poor financial decisions, but they did it because they knew no matter what, if these people went belly up, the government would bail them out. And that's not how this shit works. If you came to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to start a business in Dustin, I need to borrow $50,000. Here's my business plan. I plan on being this successful. I plan on profiting this many numbers within the first year. I plan on doing that." I'm taking a financial risk.
Yeah.
If that fails me, it falls back on no one but me, because I looked at everything you laid before me and I said, yeah, this is enough for me to loan you $50,000.
Yeah.
And if it flops, that's how it works. Shit happens.
So
Businesses, that's how. And the thing is when the housing market fell, that was an artificial bubble created by the housing market. The Federal Reserve dropped interest rates so low and made it to where people could buy houses that could not afford those houses. They were horrible investments.
Anybody who, if you had a pulse, you could get a loan.
Yeah. And that's horrible, because then you have all these people that cannot afford these homes, but the banks are just handing them out like candy. They're just saying, yeah, go for it. Go for it. You have no means of paying this loan back, but fuck it.
And then packaging up these loans.
Yeah.
And selling shit. I can't remember what the banking term was, but they were selling these shit fucking packages of loans. I mean, it was a mess.
Yeah, and so it was all artificially created. It was a short-term fix that was unsustainable.
So so right now in this country, I think the statistics, I think it's like almost it's like 70 something, almost 80% of people in this country they can't afford like a $500 emergency. And I think
that says a lot about.
I think almost half of the country lives like paycheck to paycheck, or it's something like that. Because you know who Kyle Kulinski is?
I've heard the name.
He has a channel on YouTube that's fucking awesome called Secular Talk, and then there's another guy. His name is Jimmy Dore. He has another badass channel. But so long story short, the majority of Americans are barely hanging on. Okay, and obviously majority of young people are in a massive amount of debt. There's a massive amount of credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a massive amount of car loan debt. So how is that a good economy? How is the economy booming?
I don't think that's, I think we are on the way out. I think that we are slowly, it's a very long process, but I think we're now on the upturn. Our nation right now is more productive than it's ever been. There are people begging, and I just being from my side in the trades community, there are people begging for workers.
Jobs.
You know, right now, I mean, for people to come, like just from the welding side of things,
Yeah.
right now, there are jobs out in West Texas welding pipes that'll pay a ton of money for you to go out there and do that. If you go out east and you're a journeyman pipe welder, you can make up to like $125 an hour.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, that is ridiculous, you know, and so we are for so long, and I think that just because we're getting back into the more production side of things, that's bringing our nation back up as a whole, because it's making us a valuable asset. The fact that we're the number one producer of oil, you know, and if we build a strong country, a country needs to be ran like a business. I mean, that's like the capitalist side of things, you know. If a country is ran like a business, we need to be a successful business. And if we're a successful business, our people are going to flourish. And I think right now we're coming out of this horrible time of where, like you said, people are living paycheck to paycheck.
But we're in, I mean, this is free market capitalism right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not working. So how is I'm not anti-capitalism, but I think there needs to be, because I mean, the population obviously is increasing exponentially, and maybe that's now on a decline, and like it is in Japan and other countries. But it's like, what is your responsibility, or what does it mean to be a human being? Like if we have whatever 330 million people in this country, and not, I mean, the oil industry isn't going to employ everybody, or so what do we do with an excess population, or people that don't necessarily fit into our economy right now? Does that mean they should just die?
Well, I don't think that's where they don't fit into the economy. I think it comes down to there are going to be those who have and those who don't, you know. And yes, there's a lot of things set up in our society to keep those who don't, where it's very hard for those who don't have to get to the point where they do, you know, to get to the point where they want to be. Because once, like Jordan Peterson said, like, it's like when you're playing Monopoly, when you start getting close to zero, you know, you're I mean, one horrible thing and you're out.
Yeah, which is a lot of people.
Which is a lot of people. But the thing is that that's how society works. And if you want to get out, the patriarchy, I guess you can say,
but
you know.
Why? That's what I don't understand is money has no real value. Like, money only has value because we all say it has value. So the U.S. dollar only works because we all say it works.
Yeah.
So the Federal Reserve and these banks, I don't know if you know what fractional banking is. They basically create money out of thin air. Money has no real value.
Yeah.
Okay, so why? I don't know if you know one of the candidates running in 2020. He was just on Rogan's podcast. His name is Andrew Yang.
Oh, yes.
You watched that podcast?
I didn't see the whole thing. I started it.
So he's running on universal basic income. And, you know, his main thing is he wants to be able to provide $1,000 a month to every American, no matter whether you're a millionaire or you're fucking, you know, dirt poor, just to try to get people, you know, to where they're not, you know, just on the fucking brink, basically. But it's like, if money has, and that's why I think cryptocurrency is so interesting too, is it's like, if money has no real value, if it's not backed by gold or anything like that anymore, why could we not give everybody a base level of, you know, income to where they could at least have a house and access to water and good food, and at least be able to try to contribute something to society?
So I think that's an interesting idea, and I guess the question I have for it is, where does it stop? Like where so I have a couple questions with that. Is where did the change happen? Like where did society change from the point of, you know, what I want to know what changed, I guess you can say, because there's a drastic difference between, I mean, if we had talked about this 50 years ago, universal basic income, it'd get laughed. Like, people would laugh, and I'm not saying I don't like the idea. I think it's a very interesting idea, and I think it's a great concept. But like, what got us to this point? And I guess my other question is I guess what I'm worried with about that is the idea that, okay, we started off at $1,000.
Where does that go to?
Where are we gonna stop that? Are we gonna make the law say, okay, it can only be $1,000? We're never gonna raise it. We're never gonna lower it. But eventually, there's gonna people that are gonna say this $1,000 isn't enough.
Yeah.
You know,
okay,
this isn't enough.
So if I'm looking at like my grandparents' generation, you know, back during that time, a lot of the manufacturing was here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that moved out of the U.S. because these corporations wanted to take advantage of cheap labor in other countries.
Well, there's a lot more to it.
Really?
There was a lot more to that. A lot of manufacturing was here, yes, and we were producing a colossal shit ton of stuff. We produced a ton of steel. We produced a ton of oil. You know, I mean, dude, Bakersfield.
Products.
Yeah, just products in general, you know. If something was made in the USA, that was like a big thing, you know.
Which most things were. Clothing, all this stuff.
And then these regulations they put in, all the unions, between the unions and the government, they started regulating all this work. And then
what do you mean regulating?
So, for example, they made it to where business owners, it was very expensive to hire people. So I'll explain it. So, for example, back when my great grandpa was a welder, back when he was a welder, all you did was you showed up to work, punched your card, went to work, started welding.
Yeah.
Now, when you show up to do the steel worker's job, you show up, you punch your card, you have about 3.5 hours worth of paperwork to fill out. You got to go grab a fire watch guy to sit there while you weld, watch all the stuff, make sure nothing catches on
fire.
Like
safety stuff.
Yeah, you also have a safety watch, dude. And then all these hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
These you gotta. It's mandatory that you pay for all these benefits and everything like that. And it made it hard for people to get paid. And some people look at it as taking advantage of, but you have to look at it as having a free market means that you have the freedom to work for them or to not work for them. So it allows companies to be competitive and saying, hey, come work for us. We're going to offer you all these benefits and we're going to pay you this much.
But the problem is now there's so many people in this country that these companies, they're not worried about. There's another fucking asshole at the door if you don't work out. So they are on the good end of the deal. Okay, so they're not there's not a shortage of people that need to. And this goes back to the thing is like people. It's not like most people are gonna be like, okay, well, I didn't fit into the economy, so I'm just gonna go build my house in the woods and live off the land. It's like they don't even know how to fucking survive, you know? So it's like people have to fit in somewhere, and it's like these companies, they just keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing people, trying to get more productivity, trying to have less people to work.
Yeah.
You know, you have all these retail after 2008. They have these people working, they don't want full-time employees, so they don't have to pay people health insurance benefits. So it's like they're on the good end of the deal as far as I'm concerned. And it's just, this goes back to, you asked, when's it going to stop if we decide to give everybody a base level of income or whatever, just so they can at least survive and have housing and food and shit like that. It's like, you look at Alaska, they've had, I think for like 30 years, they've had for every citizen in Alaska, I think they get like between like $1 and $2 grand a month because of the oil industry. The oil industry there. So it's like, and
Alaska went through hell during that pipeline.
What is it?
Alaska went through hell during that pipeline.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, the amount of publicity, the amount of shit they caught from the EPA. I mean, they those towns out there in Alaska in general, they went through hell. That was the agreement that the EPA and all those groups came to with all of it. Because I will admit this, dude, they almost fucked up big time.
Really?
They were going to bury that pipeline. And the problem with burying it is you have permafrost, which would move the pipes, eventually breaking them, causing one of the largest oil spills in Alaska, ruining one of the most delicate landscapes. So I do think in that situation, because they almost made that mistake, can you imagine living in a place like that and having it destroyed by an industry?
Yeah, it'd be fucked up.
Like, I do think they deserve
anywhere
a cut,
would be fucked up,
of that. But the thing is like you were saying with that is people fitting into the economy and a lot in that payment, I think that's due payment for those people that live there, But I think it's a little ridiculous that it's gone on as long as it has. What do those people do that gives them the right now, the people now that are still collecting that paycheck just because they live there?
Yeah.
What do those people do now to deserve a cut of the pie from that company?
Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily, I'm not, 100% into that model.
Yeah.
I was just saying that because kind of like a microcosm of a percentage of a population that's getting some form of universal basic income. But to me, it's like, again, this goes back to the, what is money?
Yeah.
What value does it have? If we can just create money out of thin air, but it's like, I guess I'm not, socialism is such a dirty word. It's associated with communism or, many different things. And I just look at, I guess my thing is I look at countries like Canada or Northern European countries that are rate much higher on the happiness scale, where as a whole, the society agrees that we are in this together and we're not in competition and conflict with everyone. And we're all going to say, yes, we all deserve healthcare. We all deserve to have access to clean water and good quality food and affordable housing. Okay. And that just makes plain sense to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we can get there. And like I said, I have no fucking problem if you are an Elon Musk or you're somebody who contributes something towards society that everybody benefits from. I don't give a fuck. You should.
Yeah.
100% you should have more and you should be rewarded for that. What I have a problem with is these large corporations just fucking using people like trash and not paying their fair share back into society, back into the country. These are the people that, they're the ones that made the wealth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, big time. I think so. Are you a believer in trickle down? You're not a believer in trickle down economics?
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't fucking work. Look where we are, man.
But I don't think it works because the government has always had their hands on it. At one point,
Hands on what?
They have all these between the regulations. You know who Mike Rowe is?
Yeah.
They use
Dirty
Jobs.
Jobs, yeah. I love that guy.
So he does a lot of talks where he talks about trickle down economics and he breaks it down, and he gives multiple examples, of why it doesn't work right now, and all the different aspects in which the government has their hands on, and they make it so hard to hire someone, to bring someone on. And then when they do, they want to squeeze that person for everything they're worth because they have spent so much money to invest in this person, that they can't afford to lose out on this person. And like you said, big corporations, if they let one thing slip, 20 other things are going to slip. And now you got to pay for all that.
Yeah.
Companies set aside money for people, hiring people on and paying for them, and then just guessing that it's not going to work out and they're going to leave every year. That's a number that gets guessed. And like I know when I was working at a fine dining restaurant back in California, I was talking with the owner and I was asking him about that. And he said every single year he spends anywhere between $40,000 and $70,000 on hiring.
Yeah, there's huge turnover, obviously, in retail and restaurants. That's just a part of the industry.
Yeah, it's a part of the industry, but
a lot of those people, like I worked in restaurants and I worked in fine dining. I wasn't getting health care. They're not paying minimum wage, so your salary you're dependent on tips.
Yep.
Which is totally fucking who knows.
Well, I think minimum wage is what caused a lot of this. I don't think minimum wage should be a thing. I think it should be a free market, because when you allow a free market, it's like, here's this. In California, I was a server / bartender. I was getting paid $12.50 an hour plus all my tips. Was my work worth $12.50 an hour? Was the amount of work I was putting in worth $12.50 an hour? Absolutely not. It was cake. It's a cakewalk. Really? It'd be a cakewalk for anyone else who's been in the industry. It was easy. It was a small restaurant. We had 15, 20 tables in the restaurant, 2-3 servers on in the night. It's not about turn and burn
volume.
It's more about, you hold on to your 4 or 5 tables you have that night and you rack their tickets up to $700-800.
Yeah.
And so do I think my work was worth $12.50 an hour? Absolutely not.
Really?
No. Because I was, not only that, but the tips I was making that were almost guaranteed, but I would show up to work maybe 5 or 6 hours and then go home, And so do I think the guy at Fry's back in California should be making $13 an hour bagging groceries?
Yeah.
That's not a $13 an hour job.
Yeah. But the problem is when the cost of living is so outrageous. I mean, how do you it's out of control. The cost of living is out of control.
The cost of living is out of control because we keep raising minimum wage. I mean, if you're looking at
really?
I think if you're looking at it from a company standpoint.
Yeah.
So let's say you're a business owner and you have 15 employees, okay? You own a hardware store. Now the government tells you instead of paying your employees $9 an hour, you got to pay them $12 an hour. Mm-hmm. I know it's a drastic change, but for you, $12, you have raising it that much, you're looking at your numbers and you got two choices. You could bite the bullet, keep your employees, take the hit. Maybe you can afford it. Maybe you can afford it. So you pay the employees, or you raise your prices, or you lay off your employees, because why pay two 15-year-old kids from down the street to sweep the floors in your shop and pay them $13 an hour to do that when you can just have this guy who stocks the aisles. He always has an extra hour of downtime at his shifts. He can just sweep the floors. Mm-hmm. So what's the point of keeping those extra people on when it doesn't matter? But now those two kids can't get their foot in the door because they're screwed, because they're going into a system that's already built against them, because people are just trying to cut numbers and save numbers because it's constantly going up. And so I remember in California, when minimum wage went from when I started working, started working when I was 13, bussing tables, minimum wage was like $8.25 an hour. Mm-hmm. And then by the time I was 14, I had to leave the restaurant because I was working kind of under the table.
Oh, dang.
And I was working at Safeway. And I remember they raised prices, and I remember milk went from like $2.50 a gallon to almost $6 overnight.
What the fuck?
Overnight.
Wow. That's crazy.
And yeah, things have stabled back out, but dude, it's because huge companies have to make choices like that. And I remember everyone was freaking out about layoffs, and people did get laid off. Yeah. Because the simple fact of it is that when you have a system like a minimum wage, you're telling a company that no matter how much or little this person does, this is how much you have to pay them. And so companies are going to take advantage of that. Yeah, if they can get someone to do a hard work for minimum wage, and there's always going to be someone that's willing to do it, you know? And it's not sustainable. That's the problem, is that's what we're dealing with right now, is minimum wage is so high, and these companies have it's so expensive to hire someone. Why hire? Just keep your numbers low, keep your profits high.
But these corporations are not hurting. They're making more than they've ever made.
Oh, yeah.
And endless growth is not sustainable.
But
so
it
it's like
doesn't trickle back down.
You just said that, these companies, they have to make these decisions because they can't necessarily afford to pay these wages, but they're not, these large corporations, they're not hurting, especially when you get into the stock market, which is a whole nother clusterfuck in my opinion, because I don't know why we allow our economy to ride so heavily on basically just gambling. It's a gambling fucking circuit arena.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of these corporations where, like I was watching something a while ago where it's like, it was talking about GE, General Electric. They make more money playing money games in the stock market than they actually do creating products.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of these. Their only goal now is to become public because that's where they're making all this fucking money.
Yeah.
And then I just want to go back to the housing thing because we talked about that a little bit. It's like my dad works in the apartment management industry, and he's worked in that industry his entire career for 30 plus years. And you see now they're not building affordable housing because you can suck more money out of people if you build apartments, and you trap people into renting and not into buying. Yeah. And you have Wall Street now who is involved in this industry, and they want endless growth. So that's not fucking good.
Well, I think a lot of these people have just been allowed to run free for so long.
A free market.
And no matter what, there's always going to be someone who's going to exploit the people beneath them. And I think that when you open up an entire free market and you make it to where the options are endless.
But that's not working right now. And let's just look at housing. Housing is a complete free market right now, and that is 100% not working.
Because we've allowed them to run free, and no matter what, they're still backed by the banks.
What do you mean?
Right now, the housing market is still, like, here's the thing, is that getting loans and stuff like that, You know, it's still backed by the banks right now. And yes, you're 100% right. I have seen a huge push for apartments because I know in my hometown it's blowing up right now. Yeah. I mean, the contracts that are going out for bid, there's so many contracts going out for bid. There's new construction companies opening up. And yeah, it's wonderful for business. But I'm looking at it and I'm going, why the fuck are you building all these apartments? We need houses. Mm-hmm. We don't need apartments. Apartments are a long-term bad investment.
I agree.
Horrible investment. I do not like renting. I think
100%
renting,
agree.
You know, fortunately, I'm in a good situation right now. Renting, I have very low overhead. I have a friend of mine. You know, I live in Tempe in a 3-bedroom house, 2-bathroom, big ass backyard. I pay $350 a month for my bedroom. I get the master bedroom. Awesome. You know, so I mean, like, I am very, very fortunate and lucky to have that situation. But most people my age do not have that situation. Yeah. The house next to us just sold, and they are just totally exploiting it. It's in a college town. And they want $1,700 a month for that house. And we don't live in the nicest neighborhood. You know, this is not a good part of Tempe that we live in, you know, and they're asking that much because it's right next to ASU. And they know that somewhere out there, there's some college kid with some parent that's willing to pay for it, you know? And so they can try and do that. But that's the whole part of a free market is they're allowed to do stuff like that. But I think that you're right. The housing market, there definitely is corruption. It's not a perfect system. By any means of the imagination. It's
greed too, man. You look at these, I look on Zillow all the time because I just like looking at houses, and you see even homes back in the early 2000s were selling for a quarter of what they are trying to sell them for now.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's out of control. You have these homes that were built in the 50s, you know, and they already need to be fucking gutted and redone, but they're trying to squeeze so much money out of these homes. And then you look at the new construction too, you know, at least in the 50s, they were building these homes out of like brick.
Yeah.
And now they're building them out of like fucking plywood. I see these new construction.
Possible.
Yeah.
It's all about It's all about being as cheap as possible and then getting as much money from it as possible. I'll agree with you on that. There's a lot of corrupt shit that goes on in the housing market. I've always thought that. But I do think that one of the solutions to that is right now it is not entirely free. Right now, the government has their hands on so many different aspects. And don't get me wrong, having an entirely free market, there will be corruption. There will be people that get taken advantage of. But when you do that, you just open up so many doors to people who are saying, hey, I'm fair. After a while, those corrupt people, they fall away. And yeah, there's going to be bad people that do go to the top, just like there's bad people. You know, there's like, why do bad things happen to good people? It's like there's people that will get away with doing bad things to good people. You know, but eventually we all like to think, you know, what goes around comes around. It will come back around to bite them in the ass, you know? And like, for me, one thing I look at is like, the one thing I kind of look at it all is like, we have one life, you know, that's the way I look at it is like, you got to do everything you can to make that life count. And I look at people who take advantage of other people like that, and yeah, they might be successful, but do they really have a life? Yeah. Like, are they really using their full potential? That's why when I see someone, you know, in their 80s and their entire focus in life has been money and squeezing the shit out of people and taking as much, they're miserable as fuck. Yeah. And I look at the situation I'm in and I'm like, yeah, I'm busting my ass and I'm getting taken advantage of and I'm getting overworked. But you know what? I'm happy, like, because I have a goal and a mission and a path that I'm on, you know, and I think that, yeah, you can sit there and look that a lot of shit's fucked around you, you know, but I think that if people more look inwards and fix things in their own lives, it'll give them the mental strength to stand up and say like, no, I'm going to go somewhere else. Yeah. You know, because I think right now, people are in a really bad situation. I mean, the number of people that are depressed is alarming. The number of people that deal with depression is alarming. And now that person's got to go into work and try and fight for why they think they're valuable enough
to deal with some asshole boss.
Yeah, to make $14 an hour. They can't make that argument because they barely see themselves as valuable. You know,
100%
and I think that that's part of the bigger issue is that a lot of these people used to be a lot more assertive back then.
Well, that's what this, I think, and you said earlier, I didn't deserve to make this doing that job because it was too, I think most people highly, highly undervalue themselves. Big and I think that's a huge issue because it's like, you do deserve to have a nice home and you do deserve clean water and good food and fucking not to be a slave. People deserve that. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's why I hate the mentality in this country that, again, I have no issue with competition, but I feel like in this country we're all against each other, and that's just a miserable.
We're so polarized.
That's right a now. Miserable existence to be in. I don't want to be against I don't care what religion you are. I don't do whatever you want to do. But I at least feel like we used to be at least like, yeah, we're all Americans. We're all in this together. You know,
American pride's out the window right now. I think that things are so polarized right now between the left and the right. That the left keeps pushing farther to the left. You know, and the right. And obviously, I'm gonna be a little bit more biased. I put myself in the middle-ish right, so I'm gonna be a little bit biased. But I feel like the right is just kind of standing their ground, and saying like, no. But the farther to the left,
there is a far right too.
There is a far right.
Like you look 100%. At people like Alex Jones.
Oh,
that dude's a fucking nut job, man. And he has direct contact with the president.
Yeah.
You see people like Roger Stone. That guy's a slimy motherfucker.
Roger Stone is slimy as fuck, but he's a politician, and that's where now I think the whole world of politicians I think is very corrupt. And the one thing that I will commend Donald Trump for is that he's not a politician; he's a businessman. He is a businessman at heart. 100%. He doesn't play their games, and it's just like yesterday. He's playing them right now with the whole national state of emergency thing. Their presidents have done that all the time. During their presidency, at least one president's declared a national state of emergency to get something that they wanted done that they couldn't get through Congress. So for people to suddenly look at Trump and say, "Oh, fuck you, you fucking racist," you know, like, just blows my mind because like people are willing to blatantly overlook that. But I think people like Roger Stone are just fucking crooked. And don't get me wrong, he's completely responsible for getting Trump where he's at because he's good at what he does. He's good at being a slime ball.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
he's good at finessing the system. You know. And the problem is that's how our politics are ran. And I think right now more than ever, there's a huge disconnect between the people up and the people down here. The general population and the politicians are no longer connected to the people. You know, and I do think that because you have people spouting off for things that even the left, you have the left spouting off on things where even their own left is like, whoa. Like, where the fuck did that come from? You know?
Yeah,
I mean, you got Virginia pushing for abortion that can go into the end of the third trimester.
Jesus.
You know, they just passed it. Right now, you can abort a baby as long as it hasn't exited the vaginal canal. You can abort a child.
That's fucked up. Yeah, that's fucked up.
So now we're saying that human life is defined by exiting the vaginal canal.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
So, like, you know, and even people on the left are I know I have a lot of friends who are for abortion. For me, I'm in the middle. I think there's a lot more questions to it. I think there's a lot more questions that need to be answered. You know, I'm not going to say I'm for it or against it, you know, but, you know, to push it that far, that, you know, we're talking about a child, you know, a child that's been kicking and pushing at the womb, you know, and now you're saying that what gives it life is whether or not it's, you know, been out of the mom yet.
Yeah, that's fucked.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you know, and then the left takes it as far as there's a picture circulating on Facebook. There was a woman who's very prominent in the media when it comes to the left. I'm trying to remember her name.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
No, this was a different woman. These were a bunch of protesters, and they run this huge organization. One of their people dressed up as the Virgin Mary, and then they had a baby dressed up as Jesus. And she stood in front of the Capitol building, and they showed her pretending to give birth, and then they aborted the baby as it came out. So that shit's okay for the left to do stuff like that?
No, I don't think it's okay. Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that I'm going back to the disconnect. There's this huge disconnect between the people, and the left is so caught up in their own shit. I don't think the right is they are caught up in their own shit for sure. But I do think both sides have great things to offer. I just think that we're so polarized right now. It's completely dividing the country.
Well, I think that's a weird thing about the internet. And another reason why I think Joe Rogan's so important is he's one of the only reasonable voices out there. But that's an issue with the internet in general. Is it's like the people or going out and doing these protests, most of these people that are doing that are people who have extreme ideas. The majority of normal Americans who are just trying to work their job aren't going on to fucking YouTube like Alex Jones and spewing out crazy shit 24/7. Because they're normal people. So I feel like that's a problem with the internet. Is there's the extremes of the ideas on the internet, because those are the people who want to go out there and fucking. We need more people like Joe Rogan, who are people that are reasonable human beings, and just having these conversations, because I think I'm not Democrat or Republican. And that Andrew Yang, that guy who was on, he said, he had the line of, you know, I'm not for I'm just, what the fuck did he say? It was a great line. It was like, I'm not for liberal or conservative. I'm just for forward. Or I don't know. I'm probably fucking up that. But anyway, it's the same thing. It's like, and I think that's what the majority of people want, is that we just want, the right thing to be done, and I think most people do want to work and they want to contribute. And I don't think the majority of people want to be lazy fucking fat assholes and sit on their couch all day and eat cheese puffs and just suck off the government. I certainly don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to contribute. I want to be a part of society. So it's like, I think the majority of people are like that. And it's like, how do we get there and not fucking tear each other apart? Because it's like, I'm not against anybody, no matter what if you're a Republican or whatever the fuck you are. It's like, I hate that, like you said, we're so divided right now. I don't like that.
But I do think that it's crazy because we live in a system where if you want to be successful, you can be successful. Yeah. I don't think that the system's so rigged that if you don't put your mind to it and you don't determine, if you don't,
it's very, 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 very hard.
It's hard, 100%. Yeah. But it takes dedication, and I feel like now, like I said, a lot of people in the millennial generation just want this to be
normal
shit
them. Though. I think people just, and again, what is successful? It's like, for some people, they might just want a home and to be able to maintain a nice little life and work in a coffee shop and be a positive person and contribute that positivity towards society. And some other people might want to be a fucking baller and have a mansion on and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it's like, I think we at least need to allow people to live with dignity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think that the scary part comes is where you decide, because like you said, where do you
draw the line?
What's comfortable?
Having a home, having access to good food, clean water. That's the basic necessities of life.
But a comfortable home? What defines a comfortable home? Who defines that?
A normal home. I'm not saying like everybody needs a fucking mansion.
But the way you would define normal and the way I would define normal might be different compared to.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So where do you who puts that definition? And that's the question I have, is because that's where things get a little scary, is like, where do you draw that line? Yeah. Where do you, because once the scary part is don't get me wrong, I love a lot of socialist ideas. I love a lot of them. I think they all come from a great place and great intentions. But the scary thing is once you get that ball rolling, you can never stop that ball. Once you put in government incentives and government things like that, you will never take that back. You can't. You can never work. We will never be able to work ourselves away from, the welfare system or the food stamp systems. And not saying we should, but I think we give out way too much right now. And that's just an example, is that we will never be able to roll this back. It'll only keep going forward. And I think that honestly, I love the idea of a universal, income. And I was actually talking about this with my neighbor a couple days ago, because he had a similar idea, is what if we gave everyone, a base foundation to start at, that when you turn 18, every month. And the idea we kind of came to is that what if that only happened for, the first 5 years of your life after becoming an adult? What if for the first 5 years, every month we gave you $1,000? I think that's a great idea.
That's what Andrew Yang, his proposal was. But the thing with that, or maybe it's once you don't need it anymore, you opt out.
Oh, but people won't do that. Yeah. The number of people that will do that is very small.
His idea was every American, no matter you're a millionaire or you're, you don't have any money, you get $1,000 a month, and he had a plan outlined for that. But this goes back to who, the socialism piece, and so right now we don't invest in American people, but we bail these fucking greedy ass bankers out. We bail out these companies that are too big to fail. So right now we're bailing out, these fucking criminals,
because they got personal interests.
How about we not bail out the criminals and we invest in us, our citizens, and the people?
The politicians have too many personal interests. I think that there's the amount of insider trading, and all this
lobbying.
Garbage. Yeah, lobbying. I think the fact that we have lobbyists just speaks volumes to where we're at as a country. I think the fact that we have lobbyists for big tobacco, we have lobbyists for big pharma, we have lobbyists for all these things. It's disgusting. Like, in my opinion,
it should be illegal.
It should. And I think that says that, like I said, that speaks volumes to where we're at as a nation, you know. But I think that there's a lot. I think that there's so much wrong, you know. But I think one thing that always gives me hope and kind of like makes me take a step back and realize that things aren't all that bad is I just look at other countries, you know, and I just realized, like, you know, like, yeah, things aren't that good right now as a nation. I feel like we're on the up. We're on the up and up. Man. I really feel that way. I feel like this generation, I feel like the polarization is going to breed itself out. Maybe not this generation, but the generation after, like the ones that are going to be like in the first grade right now or the second grade right now. I feel like that's the generation that's going to come up and kind of realize, like, hey, enough is enough. Because I think that people are starting to realize that and I feel like by the time that generation comes up, we're going to have a whole new generation of politicians. Because right now, definitely. Dude, we got politicians that are about to croak. Yeah. I mean, we got...
I can't wait, man.
I mean, Dianne Feinstein looks like she's about to fall over. What's her... the lady that she's Speaker of the House. Pelosi.
Yeah, they're all ancient.
She looks like she's got just so much.
They're going to do a huge favor for the millennials by dying, unfortunately, as like, you know, negative as that sounds.
Yeah, they're too tied, and I do think there needs to be laws in place that allow politicians not to get tied to these massive organizations. And I do think that one of the people on the left is actually putting out a bill I really agree with right now that is allowing more transparency between what these politicians are tied to.
Yeah, they need,
you know, because these special interest groups and where they get donations, you know, is terrifying. And that's on both sides. It's on both sides.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
And one thing I've always been able to appreciate about the left is the left always has ideas and the right always has the idea of looking at those ideas and finding a realistic way to make them work. And I think if people looked at it like that, things would be a lot different, because the left has a lot of wonderful ideas, you know, and I think that they're the more creative side of things. And I can relate with that because I love being creative, you know, and I think where some people on the left, they come from a place of good intentions with really big hearts. Yeah. And the right is looking at it like, okay, well, we got to look at the numbers, you know, we got to break this down and say, does this work? You know, and you can look at the new Green Deal, you know, that Alexandria Cortez shit came up with. That is not financially going to work.
I honestly don't know a whole lot about the details of that. I heard about her presenting that, but it's like, from my end, the way I like to look at it is like, if I was an alien coming down on this planet and just looking at the USA, there are no universal laws that we have to have a stock market. We have to have this. So we could create a system. We could do whatever we want, really. So it's like, how do we create a system that is fair, that allows for people who want to contribute more to do that and be rewarded, and that it allows more cooperation for the entire society? How do we create that system? And how do we not just the homeless populations are getting fucking out of control. I mean, it's more and more homeless people. It's like, there has to be some mental health. Like you said, it's a huge issue in this country. It's like, how do we create a society that is better for everyone? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think that's the question that we've had. I think that's the question that's gone on since, you know, the
dawn of time.
Yeah. You know, is how do you constantly improve? And I think everyone wants to improve, and I want everyone to succeed.
Yeah.
I want everyone to be successful and live their best life.
Because that makes your life better.
Yeah.
When everybody around you is happy and not a fuck up, that enhances your life.
Exactly.
And my life.
And I think that the only way I think that right now we're battling out the ideas of how to get that.
Yeah.
You know, and I definitely don't think I don't have an answer to that. I don't know how it's done. I definitely have my own ideas of how I think it should be done. And I think only time will tell. And I think no matter what, there's always going to be this clash of ideas. And I think that we've gotten to the point right now that even if one side were to put up a really good idea, it's still going to get generalized and shot down by one side or the other. You know, and I think that right now, I honestly believe right now, because the left controls more of the mainstream media, the right is more persecuted than ever right now. Yeah, because you can't tell me that, you know, if you were to ever, you can't, dude, if you were to walk outside right now with a Make America Great Again hat, or you were to go to like AZ Mills or Harkins, you would get harassed by at least 5 or 6 people.
I do have to say, and I'm not trying to shit on anybody, but this past election, I was in Colorado, living in Colorado at the time, and I had a Bernie Sanders sticker on the back of my truck. And I got into 2 road rage incidents that was not provoked by me. So it's it's on both sides. And again, there's fucking crazies on both sides.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I would never go up to somebody because they had that hat on and start.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a fucking idiot if you do that, okay? So there's I 100% agree with you. There's morons on both fucking sides.
There's a lot. I feel like there's a lot more on the left, in my opinion. I feel like there's less. You rarely hear any stories about people. I mean, you hear about them. They do happen. But when they do happen, they get blown up in every news media and made an example of. When, you know, you got that Native American guy that stopped that high school kid, got in his face and started doing that. And then they doxed him. Kathy Griffith called for that kid to get doxed.
That's fucked up.
A kid, a 16-year-old kid, you know, and you have things like this.
And CNN, they didn't cover that there was a Black Israelites group that was like yelling out all this crazy shit to this group of boys.
Never got showed.
And they didn't show any of that. All they showed was that one clip of when that Native American man had approached them.
Exactly.
So yeah, I 100% agree with you that the mainstream media is tailoring
to the left.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
And I think as long as this bickering bullshit goes on between both sides, nothing is going to get done because we'll see it. I guarantee you, I'm calling it right now. They're going to sue Trump for claiming the state of emergency. It's going to go to the appellate court. Then they're going to get sued again. They're going to take it to the Supreme Court, and then they're going to win. Because this is constitutional. He's done this before every time, but this constant bickering is just wasting taxpayer money. Look at how much money we're going to waste on all this bullshit paperwork they're going to have to go through and everything just for they're going to sue him. Then they're going to go to the appellate court. Look how much money that's going to cost.
Yeah.
You know, then it's going to go to the Supreme Court. That's going to cost a shit ton more money. You know, and all this stuff is just racking up all because people are bickering, because people don't want to look at the simple facts, and because they're so polarized to these sides because they're tied to their side.
Yeah.
You know, everyone thinks that, you know, it's just like, this is just an example. I know what we were talking about, but the thing is when it comes to things getting fixed and things getting done, they don't get done because people are not willing to sit down and look at the facts.
Yeah.
You know, the simple fact of it is do we need to spend $5 billion on a wall? In some places, yes. In some places, no. You know, most of the drugs that come over the United States, very few of them actually. They go through ports, and they go through, you know, the airport system. You know, they come over the plane. It's how most of the illegal immigrants make it here, is they fly in.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, but the problem that people don't see is that a lot of the left just listens to what groups like CNN say.
Yeah.
And it's like, here's a simple fact of it. You know, is crime is up. Illegal immigrant crime is up. The left doesn't want to admit that. They'll lie and say that that's a racist statement. It's not.
That's fucked up, no doubt.
You know, and so like they're just, don't get me wrong, I don't think they're all bad. I think we definitely, and what he's saying, and people don't want to listen to it, is that there needs to be an improved immigration system. But I think that's just one example of how we're just so polarized as a nation. We can't have conversations like this anymore. Conversations like this don't happen.
Yeah.
Because, you know, one side says, oh, you're racist, and the other side says, oh, fuck you. Like, why are we even having this conversation? Because I knew you were going to act like this. And the other side saying, I knew you were going to act like that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And then it just becomes this whole thing of then branding, you know, oh, well, Dustin's a fucking racist, you know. And then I'm like, oh, well, this guy's a fucking racist, you know. He doesn't want the best for our da-da-da-da, you know, and nothing ever gets solved.
I do have to say, though, so we're in Arizona, and having grown up in Arizona, and I lived in California for a while and worked in restaurants out in California. It's like...
Oh, nice. What part?
Newport Beach.
Oh, dude. Oh, I love Newport.
Yeah, man. So it was fucking awesome. I wish I could afford it.
Oh, dude. Legal
But
weed,
anyways, I mean,
tight.
Living out here, you see, obviously, that almost all the people doing landscaping are Hispanic. I don't know if they're... Some of them are probably illegal aliens. Some of them are probably not. When I worked in the restaurant industry, same thing.
It wasn't always like that, though.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, like, most of those people are hardworking people, and they just want to try to come over here to earn some money.
Oh, yeah.
Either to live here and stay here or to send back home. But I agree with you. Is like, there needs to be a solid plan for people who want to immigrate over here, to get them in our system, get them contributing tax dollars. I mean, we can't just have people flooding in over the fucking borders and having, because there are a lot of crazies that are fucking coming over here that are doing illegal shit, whatever, in the drug trade or whatever the fuck they're doing. It's like, we obviously we need to fucking keep those people out of here.
Yeah.
You know?
I think right now the biggest thing that I'm concerned with about immigration is screening, obviously, but it's the taxes. Why is it fair that my dad pays 58% in taxes every year?
Yeah.
And these guys just get to skate by under the bus, and they might be field workers, but they're pulling in a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because, there's multiple government programs in play, for them to collect money from the government. You get a couple different forms of identification, and that's what they do. That's not what all of them do, but that's what a good majority of them do, and all it takes is 2 or 3 guys to be doing it, and boom, they're collecting over $100,000 combined between the 3 of them.
What are you talking about? What do you mean?
So right before I moved out here, it was extremely tragic. There was a van, like a 10-passenger van, with like 18 people in it. Mm-hmm. Got in a horrible car accident. Like I said, really tragic. There was a few kids involved, a couple babies, and it was horrible. Everyone died. Yeah. Couldn't identify a single person because each one of those people had 4 different forms of identification on them. Right. Each one of them had at least up to 4 different social security numbers. And there was a group in the Central Valley that did they did a calculation of how much these people were collecting in government handouts. Each form of identification that these people had, the total money that needed to be collected by everyone in that bus was in excess of like $800,000.
So are these like stolen identities? And then they're
these
trying
are people.
To go into
they were
government
using
programs to get assistance for like low income. Or
they were
whatever.
using social security numbers of people that had either died, or using their social security number, And so don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everyone's like this, but in my opinion, growing up in a household where my dad was working 80, 90-hour weeks, to provide the life that I was able to have growing up, and then realizing that he's paying that much money in taxes just to have it abused like that, and it's not a large thing, but illegal immigration cost us, the taxpayers, a lot of money. How much money we pay for that, I can't give you the exact number, but I'm sure if you look it up on Ben Shapiro's thrown it out there a couple times, but how much money we pay for illegal immigration as the people is outstanding.
Yeah, we have to have a system that works for sure.
And don't get me wrong, I think our system's broken, but I don't think the solution is to open up the borders and say that anyone who wants to build a wall is a fucking racist.
No, I agree. Yeah,
I don't think that's not that solution. And I think, like I said, it comes back to there's tons of good ideas, and none of these ideas are going to get put in place, and none of these problems are going to get fixed as long as we are standing at opposite sides, clenching our fists at each other, completely refusing to look at the other person's thoughts and ideas.
Well, I don't think that's what average people want. And I think that's why you see Joe Rogan, that he has so many viewers, is because people want, it's these politicians, they're not willing to fucking cooperate. And I think this next election it's going to be so critical and important that we get somebody in there that is actually going to do something. Because like you said, we're so divided. Like, I don't know how long we can like go on like this, really. You know? I think. I mean, I feel every day it feels like a fucking pressure cooker. You know what I'm saying?
I honestly think Trump's gonna win.
Do you?
I think he'll win again. I think after that, the Democratic Party is going to fall apart because they have spewed so many things, so many facts on how many people hate Trump. The general population hates Trump. But just like what happened in the last election, last election he didn't win the popular vote. But I honestly think right now it's the silent majority. I think right now there's more blacks and Hispanics making more money right now than they ever have been under any other president. Right now.
How is that? Because
our market is flourishing. Businesses are going into places that businesses have never been. Not Chicago, but where's Eminem from? Detroit. Manufacturing jobs are going back to Detroit.
Yeah.
Neighborhoods that were once dirt fucking poor because everything got outsourced to China, India, and all those countries, Bangladesh, they're now getting jobs back and people are able to work. Economies are flourishing in other states where they've been dead for so long. We have more not nuclear power plants. We have more refineries going in. We have more of these jobs going in back where places used to be. And I think that in return over time is going to start to build things up. And I think that these people are looking at it going, you know what? For the most part, a lot of things that Trump said he's made happen. There's a few things he hasn't. And he didn't go after Hillary like he said he was gonna do.
Crooked Hillary, you mean?
Yeah, you know, oh yeah, crooked Hillary.
Lock her up.
The
Okay,
Clintons.
here's my thing with the manufacturing is like the majority of the manufacturing that's going to be coming back to the U.S. is all going to be automated, and this is my issue that I have with our system. And when we have these corporations, when you're in a community, we were talking about mining earlier, or whatever, you're in a place like Detroit where auto industry was big, and then they move. It's like we need to do something to where if we're creating these cities and these communities, when they're completely reliant on this industry and the industry bails out, that these people aren't fucked over, because it's like, you know, that's when you get these cities to where they're just like, they basically are just abandoned, you know?
I think though that the fear of things being automated, you know, yes, there's automated systems to improve work, you know, but I don't think there's just too many things in that field.
What field?
You know, and just in the production field, you know, in the you know, like I was bringing up in Michigan, you know, they're bringing back in Detroit, they're bringing back a lot of the steel factories, a lot of the steel mills and stuff like that. There's so many jobs there, you know, like I said, but it's going back to what I was saying about, you know, the economies flourishing in these areas, is that they're not just flourishing because the people who own these companies in Detroit are starting to make a lot of money. They're flourishing because now they're looking for 2,500 employees to hire. You know, now they're flourishing because now there's 2,500 more people making more money than they were making the day before.
Yeah.
You know, and you multiply that in all these different areas of the United States, and we are becoming extremely productive. I mean, I don't want to bring up I was going to bring up the fishing market, but I don't think that's the fishermen and stuff. And like,
but here's my whole thing is like, I just don't think manufacturing is never going to come back to the U.S. in the way it was when we were, you know, a hub, our country.
Yeah.
I don't think. And the way automation is going, if you listen to that Andrew Yang podcast, that's why it's so interesting. Is like, you look at companies like Amazon and what they're doing in these warehouses. I mean, it's all fucking robots, man.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And even now, clothing automation is starting to take off. And I mean, everything they're gonna, you know, one of the things that Andrew Yang, he went to, I can't remember where he went, in the Midwest somewhere, and he was talking to, you know, truck drivers. I mean, he thinks in the next decade, I mean, all that entire industry is going to be completely, you know, driverless semis. I mean, there's so many industries that are going to be automated. It's just like, no matter how much, and that was his whole thing, is he ran this, I can't remember the name of this company that he ran to help entrepreneurs start up and to help create jobs. And he said he came to the realization is like, it's no matter how much we engage and help these entrepreneurs, it's a fucking drop in the bucket.
Oh yeah.
You know, we can't keep up with the population growth and the amount of jobs that are needed and good paying jobs versus, you know, you look at how the cost of living is fucking increased, you know, exponentially. Yeah. It's wages are not keeping up.
No, but I don't think, wages are not, I think it's a combination of things. I think wages are not keeping up. I don't think it's all based on greed. I don't think that simply wanting your company to be successful, you know, and charging what you think are fair prices. Yeah. I don't think that's greed. But I think that, you know, when you're getting to the point where you're willing to fuck someone else over to make money, or to make, you know, you're willing to go to that extent, I think that's greed. You know, and I think that when it comes to when you're willing to fuck over your employees, and there is a lot of that, but I think a lot of that is just because those corporations are just sick and tired of just everything, like I said, all the hoops they have to jump through, you know. And I think that a lot of these ideas, I think the reason you have so many people in these business fields that are so frustrated is because these, like the regulations, going back to the regulations and rules that are in place on them, make it very, very hard for anyone. The middle class used to flourish. You know, because the middle class was
they were paid decent wages.
Yeah, but they were also, a lot of them own their own businesses. Yeah. And now, you know, my dad ran an office. My dad runs his own health insurance company. Okay. My dad ran an office of about 10 people, and his business was picking up. He needed to hire another 5 people. But once he hit that 15 number, because compared to his income, he had to pay for full benefits for all 15 people. So now my dad's in this thing. He's like, well, I can't afford to do that. but my business is going up, but I'm not to the point where I can afford to provide full benefits for everyone. It's not that he doesn't want to, but it's like, hey, we need to get to a certain point because the government's decided, hey, if you're making that much and you want to hire that many people, you got all this money you can pay for them.
Yeah. Well, I think I 100% agree. We need more small business to come back. And I think we need to get healthcare off the fucking backs of employers. And I think these major corporations, if you look at Howard Schultz, who's now running for president, and this guy's a billionaire, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And he is saying that the government cannot, we can't afford single payer healthcare. The government cannot afford to do this. But you got to look at it as like, why would major large corporations want the burden of healthcare?
Yeah.
And to me, it's because you're holding it over the heads of employees. You're making it harder for people. You're like, I can't quit this job because I have 2 kids. I have to have health insurance.
Yep.
And then you're making it harder for small businesses.
Yep.
So I think that's why these large corporations, they don't want single payer healthcare because that gives them a little carrot to dangle over employees.
Yep.
And keep them on the fucking leash.
Exactly.
You know? And it makes it harder for small businesses because they're like, why would they have to pay for, that's ridiculous. Health insurance? That's crazy.
It's comes to the idea of what's a right and what's a luxury. And if you ask me, I don't think healthcare is a right. I think it's a luxury. And you need to work yourself to the point. You have to ask yourself, if you don't have that and you're in a situation where you need that, what choices did you make that got you in that situation? Now, don't get me wrong. I understand shit happens. You can go walk down the side of the street and get hit by a car. And if that were to happen to me right now, and obviously I have health insurance. My dad runs his own health insurance company. I'm going to have health insurance,
Yeah.
But if I was just where I'm at right now without that, dude, that would ruin me financially.
Well, that's the way I look at it is like, we're all in this together. And I think we should all contribute towards a healthcare system that works. And the way I see it is anything that involves health and safety should be something that is not a private enterprise, because it's just like you get into the fucking military. That should not be a private enterprise for-profit industry. Healthcare should not be a privatized for-profit industry, because that's where you get the greed component in there. And that's where you get, look at the pharmaceutical industry. You get these people fucking creating whatever prices they want for these drugs, and that's not working for people. If it involves health or safety, I think it's something that needs to be, again, I'm not in for large government regulation, but it's something that needs to be under the umbrella. That's why our government is there. Is there to protect our health and safety. That's all they're there to do. They're not there to fucking, get you out of bed and make your bed for you and fucking cook you breakfast.
Regulate business.
And I don't think, I want freedom and I want people to be allowed to do whatever they want. But I think if it involves health or safety, is something we need to all contribute towards, and we need to have a system that fucking works,
Well, I think there's so much. The problem is there's so much that plays into all this. I think we're both acknowledging there's an issue. Yeah. And we both acknowledge.
I like that you have a different opinion or different aspects of it, because I think you need one person has all the fucking answers.
And that's the thing is discussions like this need to happen, and I think that we acknowledge there's a problem and we have different ideas on how it should be fixed. But I think that if everyone just realizes that if more discussions like this were to happen, this would be a lot better place.
Yeah, I agree.
And I also think Jordan Peterson's idea, if a lot more people looked inwards and focused on their own lives
I agree.
and improved their own lives, the general population would be a better place and a better place to live.
Yeah, 100% agree.
And that's as recent, I don't know if you've read it, 12 Rules for Life.
I did read it, yeah.
Dude, amazing.
Yeah.
I thought that was an amazing book.
Yeah, it was a good book.
And I think that if we get that into the hands of more young people, I think it'll change the way society plays itself out, because you have a lot more people looking differently at things. Right now, I think the majority of people have this toxic mindset and this toxic idea that's taking them down the wrong path. And then you have things like, social media. And I'm sure we could talk about social media for hours.
It's fucked up.
But, dude, I'll be real. I've caught myself, on social media and just sitting there. And I'll be on there for an hour, and then I get done, and I feel like shit.
Do you have Facebook or Instagram?
I have Instagram, and that's the one that gets me.
Is that the only one that you have?
Instagram, Snapchat and stuff.
Okay.
But that's about it. It's just Instagram. But, I catch myself.
It's bizarre, man. It's bizarre.
Yeah, you get on there, and, for me, I get on there, and I start looking around, and I'm like, man, like what the fuck am I doing with my life? You know, and then you start asking that question, then you become unhappy, you know?
Yeah.
And then I think that plays a huge role into where we're at as a society.
Yeah.
And I think if people focus more on, you know, like I'm sure you read the point about tidying up your room, you know, like.
It sounds dumb, but it is. I mean, I've always been a very clean person, and I'm a minimalist for sure. So it's like, I definitely, that contributes towards my mental sanity. It's like having things organized and clean. That's a must for me.
What's crazy is that right after I read that part, I was on Netflix, and this is becoming a huge popular show right now. That lady from Japan.
Oh, I saw that.
Going into
I didn't watch it,
people's
but I saw
homes.
the advertisement.
I mean, you don't got to watch a whole episode. Just go watch the commercial for it, dude, because it shows some of their reactions. And some of it, yeah, you could tell is staged TV, but some of it's genuine, man.
Yeah.
Some of it's genuine. These people are getting their house, their living space in order. Yeah. And that is a massive thing in their life.
Yeah.
I mean, they're genuinely crying tears of just like confusion, joy, you know, happiness, because that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, this goes back to the housing thing. It's like, that's why I think having a home that you can be comfortable in, that is safe and clean, that is so critical to the whole part of your overall total health. That's why, I mean, we have to have that. We can't have people living in these shithole apartment communities just because it's good for a small group of people to suck money out of people. It's like, that's such a crucial piece. It's like, you have to have an environment that, you know what I'm saying? Like having an environment that I'm in, that I'm comfortable in, that I can go back to after a long day and wind down and fucking recuperate. I mean, you have to have that.
See, I think where we disagree on that is that I view that as a privilege. I don't view that as a right.
Why? Why?
Because I think that...
Don't you want everybody to have the opportunity to be a sane human being?
But I also think that that's something that you have to work for.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that is not just going to get handed to you. You have to... And that's a learning process. Like the times in my life where I learned the most about what it means to be an adult and what it means to be a functioning member in society and what it means to work hard were taught to me in those nights where, dude, I couldn't even afford a fucking cup of rice.
Yeah.
You know, I was eating, like when I first moved out here, man, I was dirt poor.
Yeah.
I barely had enough money to pay for rent. I ate scrambled eggs and rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for months until I was on my feet. And those were some of the most humbling days of my life.
Yeah.
I learned what it meant to work hard. I thought I knew what it meant to work hard, but no, I learned that I can work a lot harder. And I think that people need to be in those situations sometimes in order to get themselves out. And I think that just handing that to people and saying, hey, this is a right. You have a right to this house. You have a right to have this place. There needs to be... People need to work towards that comfortable goal and that comfortable lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's not something you're just going to get handed to you. And I think that doing that provides a huge disservice to people because you don't appreciate things. I appreciate things a hell of a lot more when I work for it and I pay for it.
Yeah.
You know, there's a sense of pride. I don't know, you know, like for me.
And ownership.
Yeah. For me, like in my family, when we turned 16, our parents gave us a car and they said, here's the deal. We spent $5,000 on this vehicle. You have a year to pay us back.
Yeah.
You know, when I paid my parents back that $5,000, that was the biggest point. I mean, I busted my ass for a year, man, just trying to make that much money to pay my parents back. And when I did, and that car was mine, man, that was the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% that I want to be and I enjoy being self-sufficient. And I think most people do. The problem I have is when the economy is not, I mean, it's so fucking clearly rigged. You know, and when you can't be, again, it goes back to the people, you're not going to go fucking build your house in the woods anymore. You're not going to grow. I mean, that's not even something that's in people's spectrum anymore. So it's like, my whole thing is just like, how can we, I'm not saying we need to give a bunch of shit out to everybody and create a bunch of lazy assholes, but how can we set the bar? How can we set people up for success? You know, I mean, we're all in this together. So it's just like, that's my whole thing is like, how can we set people up for success and let them be, you know, self-sustaining and let them, how can we get people off the fucking electrical grid and get more solar? How can we get things to where people are more, you know what I'm saying? Self-sufficient. Instead of at the fucking teat of, you know, corporations or the government, you know?
Very slowly.
Yeah, but I think we need to move towards that direction.
It's a slow progression, and I think that Yeah, it'll be hard to move towards that direction.
But I think we can.
I think we can, but I think the problem is that there's just too many voices. I think there's too many voices because, see, the problem that I have is that there's plenty of politicians out there that I think have great ideas that put themselves in the left. But the problem is that I don't see eye to eye on most of their other positions. So I don't want to vote someone into office that is going to go do all these other things I completely disagree with just to get one good idea through, or just to get 2 or 3 good ideas through, you know? And I think that's the problem, is that there's so many. Back in the day, if you were a Democrat and I was a Republican, the biggest conversations we had was about government spending. Now we have so many issues that are not political issues. It is such a clusterfuck on what can be discussed. We could sit here for 6, 7, 8 hours trying to talk about every issue, and we wouldn't even scratch the fucking surface.
What do you, for millennials, what do you think, like, the 3 biggest issues are?
Entitlement, hard work, and I think that there is a little bit of an element of the man, you know, that holds him back. You know, but I think that we've set them up.
The man is oppressing me.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, what do you think the 3 biggest issues are with the way our society is set up?
For our generation, lack of hard work, I think, is a big one. I think honestly, that's like the only big major issue I see that's holding us back.
So you think people just aren't trying hard enough?
I think that there's definitely a number of people who are, but the people who are trying hard enough are succeeding. Because right now, people like me and you are surrounded by people that just want shit handed to them. And like, I've seen it so much. I've seen it with people that I see it in the upcoming generation. I see it in the kids that are at welding school right now.
Really?
You know, you could blatantly see the difference between the kids that their parents are paying for it and the kids who are paying for it themselves. There's a huge difference in the work output. Mm-hmm. And it's massive. Yeah. It is gigantic. All the kids that their parents are paying for it, they're out smoking a whole pack of cigarettes. They're fucking around. They're hitting their wax pens in the classroom. You know, they're coming in hungover. They're coming in high as fuck. And it's like,
they haven't realized what's really going down.
It is, and I've seen it in the workplace too. I've seen it in restaurants. I've seen countless kids come in high school or just now getting out of high school that want to start in the restaurant industry and bus tables, work up to a server bartender position. They can't even clear a fucking table. They can't even wipe it down. You know, they don't have an idea of what hard work is. And I feel like a lot of that's due to parents over babying their kids and wanting them to focus on school and not work in high school. And I think that that's a huge mistake. Back then, people played sports, worked on the weekends, you know, went to school, and they had a general idea of what hard work was. But now we make all these excuses for kids. I think parents have just made so many excuses for kids to fall back. You know, I have friends right now that are graduating from college that are 23, 24 years old. Their parents still pay for their gas. Yeah. I got friends that are getting married. Their parents just bought them a house. Parents just bought a brand new car. Parents are paying for all their shit. Yeah. What the fuck do you learn in that? Yeah. And I think that, yeah, those are specific examples in, you know, somewhat rare situations, but even take it down to a small level of parents paying for your gas. How are you going to learn how to budget your income if your parents are constantly paying for clothes, paying for gas, paying for grocery bills, paying for all this stuff? Yeah. You know, and I understand it's you're in an economy and a system that's kind of built against you. Yes, I'll agree with you on that. But you have to learn how to navigate that when you realize most of the population and most of the people our age, I'm not saying everyone, but in my opinion, don't know what a genuine hard day's work looks like. And I think that there's this idea that people have become too obsessed with, and I think Instagram is to blame for this, that you need to be happy every day you go to work. That work is somehow going to provide some spiritual happiness.
Do you think there's something wrong with that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think that there's nothing wrong with pursuing that. But I think you need to acknowledge, I think the general people that want to pursue that need to acknowledge that you're taking a big risk doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
That not everyone is going to get to live in a Sprinter van and go rock climb and get paid a shit ton of money for it.
Come on, bro.
Like, you know, not everyone.
That's a good life.
Like, I wanted to do that. Shit. I wanted to do that for the longest time. I still can do it, but I had to ask myself, what do I want? And to be real, I want a family. I want to be a husband. I want to be a father. I want to have kids. I want to do all that things. And yeah, there's guys that have made that work, but they've been doing this for way longer than I have, you know, and that, to be real, if I were to make that choice, I wouldn't become, that's not a family lifestyle.
Yeah, no, for sure not.
Not at all.
Yeah, no.
You know?
But at least you some people would just go out, fucking have a kid, and then fuck off, leave the mother by herself and still go do it.
Exactly.
So at least you're smart enough to make those quality decisions.
Exactly. And I made a choice of I asked myself, what kind of life do I really want? Because I was in a horrible place, man. I was an alcoholic.
Really?
I was just smoking myself stupid every day.
Yeah.
Like I would go to work like 9 hours, come home, just smoke myself stupid and drink a whole bottle of gin every night. And eventually I got to this point where I asked myself, I'm like, what do I want to do with my life? Because this right here is just, I'm going to end up killing myself. Like, this is fucking pointless. You know, this is mundane. This is endless, you know? And you have to find that value in that purpose to your life. And I think people are looking for that in all the wrong places. I think things like Instagram are glorifying these jobs of these people that are far and few in between. You know, all these people, they follow people like, you know, Supreme Patty and all these other guys, you know, that are,
doing
in my
stupid
opinion,
shit.
they are the scum of the earth. Like, they are setting the worst possible example for people, saying, hey, if you work hard enough, you can have what I have.
Yeah, well,
you can do the things I do. And those jobs are few and far between, those social influencers and those people that, you know, can go to work every day and be like, I love what I do. I get to fight for the environment. I get to do this and I get to do that. And it's like, sometimes work is just work, and we've detached that from this, and we've put this social, I guess, construct on the idea of what work is.
Yeah.
And I think that it is such a detriment to our generation, because our generation wants all this meaning from work. And don't get me wrong, there needs to be meaning to work, but to the level at which it's at now, that you need to derive your value from what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, that's not. Like, I don't think anyone should find their
Well, I
value
think finding your passion is generally probably something that's going to happen probably, if you're lucky, your late 20s to early 30s. Like, for me, when I got out of high school, I was like, I want to go hard as fuck. I want to be successful. You know, so I've done many different jobs, and it's only up until recently that I've found things that I'm really resonate with me and I'm really passionate about. And I agree with you that working in restaurants, working in the service industry have all been things that have built a lot of character and have been very good for me. But my issue is, when you're setting young people up for failure, when you're loading them down with debt, when you're shooting them out into a job market where housing is out of control, you know, wages are stagnant. That's my issue.
Yeah.
And I 100% agree with you. I think people should work hard. You're not going to be fucking over the moon, ecstatic, happy every day. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think that we could definitely do a lot better in this country with just being more of a fucking team, more of a unit.
Yeah, more team players.
And being less doing what's good for large corporations and fucking over little people. I mean, you look at what they're doing in Venezuela right now. You know what I'm saying? That's fucked up, okay? Maduro was democratically elected by his people. We come in, say, no, this guy is now president. We have John Bolton, who is like, yeah, we're basically going over there because, you know, it'd be good for the U.S. to get U.S. oil companies down there. You know, it'd be kind of good for everybody. That we don't need to be involved in that shit.
No, not at all.
You know what I'm saying? We don't need to police the entire world. We need to worry about what's going on right here and fixing things. I don't. Yeah, I'm not.
I'm a firm believer in that we need to be more of an isolationist country. We have our own shitstorm going on over here, and we're more focused about being involved in other people's shit.
Yeah.
I think that honestly, like, we need to focus on building ourselves. I would consider, you know, like, I think we need to have that more nationalist mindset, because I think we have so many issues over here in our own territories. But that's why I commended Trump for pulling the troops out of Syria, you know, in a sense. I mean, it was a tricky situation, because then the Kurds are going to get slaughtered by by the Turks, you know, and Russia's going to take over, and Russia's proven themselves to be pretty fucking ruthless and really not care about who's in the way. You know, and I disagree with that, but at the same time, I feel like, you know what, as a nation, we need to focus on ourselves. Like, we need to,
at least
right now, we need to get to the point where, you know what, we can reach out and help other countries. We can go step over and say, hey, like, if we bring our economy here, this is what it'll do for your country. You know, like if we bring
Yeah.
business here, this is what it'll do. I mean, at the same time, look at Venezuela, look at Brazil, look at Costa Rica. People want to look at Costa Rica and say they're in a horrible place right now, but the problem is Costa Rica has a true free economy, and multiple businesses from America are moving over there, and their economy is on the rise because trickle-down economics provenly works in their country right now. The government does not touch anything in their economic system right now. Give it a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before they do.
Yeah.
But it is insane because it's feeding back in the economy. You know, they're providing all these jobs where they could provide competitive wages, where they could do all these things, you know.
That's what I think about is so interesting about the world in general and where we're at right now. And you have all these different societies. And it's like you look at all these different countries and how they run their societies. And it's just so interesting. Like I was watching something the other day about Shanghai. And, you know, they provide housing for all their citizens. So it's like just looking at, it's just so interesting to me seeing all these different ways people run things all over the world. And it's just interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
I think it's a crazy time we live in right now.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely, but I think more conversations like this need to happen.
Yeah,
and that's the problem, you know, is, you know, going back to what we started talking about, like I said, it's just we live in a day and age where conversations like this don't happen.
Yeah.
Because people are too afraid to voice their opinions and ideas because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think for sure another huge issue in this country is it's like you have a small group of individuals and corporations who are so powerful and so influential. That can't be happening. I mean, you can't have small groups of billionaires deciding on what's best for their corporation and expect that to work out for people. No matter how hard people are working, it's like, that's just not going to be good, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know how you get away from that. I don't know if you saw Davos, this conference that happened a few weeks ago. It's this conference, I think in Switzerland, where every year, you know, billionaires from around the world go and talk about, you know, what's going on in their industries and how the economy in the world is all going. But there was an economist, there was professors there from all over the country or world, and one of them was there. I think he was from the UK, and he was on this panel, and they had Michael Dell sitting up there, who's a billionaire, and they were all talking and just talking about global issues. And I thought one of the interesting things that this guy had said is like, the interviewer had asked Michael Dell, he's, you know, what do you think about, you know, things that are going on in the U.S. right now? And I think she had asked him about what Alexandria Ocasio had proposed about the 70% tax on, over $10 million income per year, or whatever it was. And anyways, he had said basically flat out, Michael Dell, he's like, you know, that's fucking ludicrous. That doesn't work. But the interesting thing was this other guy who was on the panel, who was a professor, he's like, you know, no, Michael Dell was like, when has that ever worked in history? He's like, no, that does work. You look back, and again, I'm no fucking expert on this. You might want to go Google this yourself, anybody who's listening to this, but you go back, you know, in the 50s or earlier in the U.S. history, people, millionaires, whatever they were taxed way, way, way more than they are now, way more heavily. And people, you know, don't realize is like these people who are allowed to accumulate these outrageous billionaire, crazy wealth, nobody would ever, it's ludicrous what these people have accumulated. It's like nobody fucking needs that much money. It's like the loopholes that these people they've got into the government, they've, you know, whatever they've done, it's like, it's just ridiculous that these companies, individuals, corporations, they're not paying their fair share for sure. 100%. And I don't know how, it's so funny to me that Trump, this billionaire from New York, who this guy has been, you know, ruthless his whole career. It's just interesting to me that he's now the champion of the everyday average American kind of Joe dude. This guy.
Well, I think that I've heard that statistic before, and I think that it's one thing you got to go look back on is, we taxed the rich back in like what it was, I think it was the 1930s, 1940s, around that time, going into the 50s. The rich were taxed very, very highly. But if you go back and look at how much money was actually taken in through taxes, it was nowhere close to what the tax numbers were and what they were asking, because there were so many loopholes, write-offs, different things for these people to go through. To where they never paid that much. The difference was government spending wasn't where it was at today. I think that I've always thought this is that this is not an issue of taxes. You think about how much money our government takes in just a year alone, and how much money we waste on just pointless shit, useless shit. There's actually a guy, he was an old reporter for Fox News, that has a series on YouTube. I'll have to look it up before I take off, but he had a series on YouTube where pretty much he just exploits how much free shit you can get from the government and how they'll pay for it. He got a golf cart from the government.
What the fuck? How?
$1,700 golf cart, because he got all his paperwork filed and everything, and sure enough, the government shipped it to his front door, and he shows you how to do it and the process and everything.
That doesn't make any sense, but that sounds crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
He pulled it off. There's all these different government programs, and we just waste a ton of money. It's like, look at California. This is those similar ideas of taxing the rich and charging more for different tax brackets. Look at how it worked in California. California takes in the most taxes out of any other state in the nation.
It's the biggest economy by far.
Yet we are the poorest state in the nation. We have no money. We blew it on a train going from nowhere to nowhere that they just bailed on. Yeah. They're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, but poorest by what measure? Because apparently we're the richest, most powerful country in the world, but we're $22 trillion in debt.
Exactly.
So what does that mean?
Exactly. And so I think we're on the path. Obviously, to make money, you got to spend money. I think that's just how it goes, and that's just how this economy works. But like I said, I think there's a lot of different things that need to be fixed. And I think that it's going to take our generation getting together and doing things like this, and whether this gets 200 views or 2,000 views, this is still going to cause it. I hope it sparks a discussion between other people,
man. Well, you're definitely going to have to fucking come back on.
Oh, dude.
And we'll talk more about different subjects. And
I'm super
we're almost
down.
at 2 hours now, so I think wind it down. But 100% I want you to come back on.
Oh, for sure.
Dang. Dustin. Balling out. Is that Patagonia?
Oh yeah, dude.
Fuck yeah, Patagonia.
Huge fan. I don't
Shout out to Patagonia. We need a sponsor.
Don't share their political views, but I love what they stand for with the environment. So
damn,
it's
man.
awesome.
Well, hell yeah, thank you again I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad I got to talk to your dad one night.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Meant to be.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right, sweet. Thank you. Beautiful. Adios.
Thank you.